All right, good evening. So the word of the evening is the sun came out for 2 minutes, maybe. Today, 5 minutes, so it's there. It's 7 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda, any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? I don't think so. And then any public comment? Okay.
Well, it's,
Maybe you should just say who you are. Just,
Okay.
Yeah.
Gil
Okay.
Coates.
Yeah.
Come to the microphone, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Gil Coates. I have last Thursday's Citizen. And there was a comment under the section, or there's a statement under Hinesburg brainstorms, lot 15 options. And there's a couple sentences, or part of 2 sentences, that I was wondering about and wanted to try
Is
to
that
get.
the one I was quoted in?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
We understand that additional money will be needed for legal fees as well as for land acquisition. The town could also commit funds from the Vermont gas payment. My question is, the Vermont gas payment, where does that stand?
That's a good question. We've asked that question too. So there was 2 chunks of money. Some of it went to the rec fields. And then during that time, there was a lot of discussion about where the money should go. And then $40,000?
$60,000.
$60,000.
190 went to the rec field, 60,
Right.
I mean 40.
60.
60.
60 went to the,
So we had a motion that said we were going to put that in a fund and use that fund to support education,
stewardship
environmental
of
stuff.
public land
Yeah.
and education. And
Programs
the
and
interest of which to be used for stewardship of public land and educational programs, the principal to be invested.
Yep, I've got it right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a motion, and we've had a couple of discussions about what exactly was that motion. It was a very busy meeting, and there were many motions made. So I know Renee and Joy spent some time looking at what really did we say, and I think Andrea's captured it.
Yeah.
So, but there was other discussion saying, hey, potentially that money, I think maybe some folks from Responsible Growth of Hinesburg, said, hey, there's some money that could be used, or other monies, I guess, if additional monies were required. So,
Well,
Okay.
I want to say it says quite specifically that the 60,000 be put in an investment account with the interest to be used for environmental stewardship of public lands and priority given to Japrag's Park. And the fund be overseen by Gil Coates. No, it says elected,
somebody like him.
it says elected officials.
Okay.
Although at the last our last select board meeting, we did bring up the fact that we need to address that thing of it being invested, and I suggested that we ask the Peck Estate to come in and talk to us about how we might go about doing that, the Peck Estate trustees. We maybe should make a formal, at some point, maybe after we get the budget stuff done, to be able to talk with you about how we might go about doing that.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
That's that's it from me.
All right.
So, yeah, you're not the only one who was sort of saying what was supposed to happen, because we were all asking that question too, just to really clarify what did we say at that time, and that's what we said.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
All right. No other public comment, I guess. So the next item is a review of the capital improvement plan. It's really the first step in our budget. And we had a number of items in our packet, including, why don't you, I'll give it to you. How about that? I could go over what I liked about what was in the packet.
All right, so I put in a number of things. The first one that we're looking at right now on the screen is just the budget development process, which you've seen multiple times, but I thought I'd bring it up again tonight. So tonight's meeting is just a sort of a little preview of where we're at right now based on the budget meetings that we've had with department heads and myself, that they're going to be bringing to you in their presentations on December 10th and 17th. So I did go through and input all of that information and other information that I've received from boards and committees and outside sources into the general fund expenditure budget. And so there's a draft of that.
Right.
No, don't pay too close attention to the totals at the bottom for the other ones because I had to remove a couple budgets which impacted the previous years. That doesn't really have an impact. It's just, I'll correct that later on. But just so you can see, get a sense of what the FY20 is looking at before you start meeting with the department heads next week.
So
the
for most of
presentations.
that, so I looked at it quickly. So most of those, you've gotten most of the input.
I've
in
gotten
there.
a lot of it. I've highlighted things that I've just got a
yellow
placeholder figure,
highlights, yeah.
or something that maybe we need to look at a little further or something. So I tried to kind of highlight some of those pieces.
Okay. I mean, just generally, it's just an overview, generally, there didn't seem to be any big surprises. And there's a few increases here or there.
Right.
But, again, everything's just fairly balanced.
Right.
No giant changes.
It's, so it's a year to take a closer look at our capital projects. And so that, if this would be a time to sort of be looking at those, and if there's some things that we want to incorporate into it, we could still try to stay at that 2.8% target overall. Right now, we're, I think, at 1.7% as the expenditures show right now. Like, I haven't done the revenue side or anything like that, but the expenditures themselves currently as they are with some missing information from people with, it's, I think, around a 1.7 increase over FY19.
Okay.
I can pull that open.
And have you got benefits in there at this point?
I do. Some of them we're still waiting for some figures on, and again, we're doing the RFP for insurance, so those I kept with what we had last year until we have more information. But if you go...
And that would be highlighted in yellow,
Yeah.
probably, yeah?
I did highlight the select board wages just as something those haven't been adjusted in a while.
I thought we did get a.
A couple of years ago,
I think
maybe.
it's been a
Oh, okay.
couple of years.
I was pleasantly surprised when I opened the envelope.
I was too. Didn't expect it. Yeah, I did see it. Yeah. I forgot. That's how you was coming.
So the general idea, I just wanted to kind of put this all together so you could have something to look at over the course of this week, in preparation for next week and the next two select board meetings.
Yeah, it's helpful.
So you can see sort of where we're at. I made this into a PDF so it doesn't show all of my little percentages on the sidebars. But I think it's like around a 1.7%, the $52,149 more than the previous year. Again, that FY19 budget amount isn't quite
Exact.
exact.
Right. Yeah.
On my other spreadsheet, I have the figure of what the difference is from the, but it's around, I think, a 1.7% increase.
So by next Monday's meeting, do you think you'll have this a lot, the final few pieces like that?
Yeah, I mean, the only pieces that I miss, actually, I just, before this meeting started tonight, I got an email back from the Lake Iroquois Recreation District. They're still trying to figure it out, but it sounds like that's going to be a little bit of an increase because the town of Williston's no longer doing it. They put an RFP out, so separate contractor is going to be doing that work. So that'll be it'll be more than the 2,000 request, but they're.
Is this the recreation district?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But that is having to do with BB Lane. And I
Yeah.
think when we were, Chris was here, that was Lake Iroquois Association. But what I had asked for, and I would like to, I think maybe before we approve, is this okay to talk about this right now, or should I wait?
I mean, you can do a brief if I can. Those could be questions I could ask them.
Yeah,
as
okay,
they're trying
so
to figure it
I would
out.
say they're doing the district is doing an RFP. I think what, my point is that I would, and I think the Lake Iroquois Association was applying for a grant, and maybe it's gotten it already, to do some improvement on BB Lane. I just think that it would be important that there be some kind of memorandum of understanding, which I think is in the minutes from last meeting, that really identifies the responsibilities, and that if there needs to be some money put in there for legal work or whatever, to draft up something that identifies, what the residents are paying, what the Lake Iroquois Recreation District, who's responsible for what on the on that road, and that, our only kind of leverage in this is whether we, approve the budget. I'm realizing that in terms of dealing with other entities who are, quote, municipalities, that
Right.
Right.
we would like to, I would like to support these improvements, but I think there needs to be some mechanism that they can move ahead with, so that it's not dependent on who's on the board then and what the whims of each town who's a member of the municipality, that there's something that gets kind of written down and codified.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. I think we talked about this quite a bit last year, and they gave some information, but we can.
Just
We can
like,
see where they're
is that
at.
on your work plan for
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
making this happen?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Green Mountain Transit, I haven't heard confirmation of what. Do you know what that is?
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's 3%.
3%?
I
Okay.
believe. I can get confirmation.
That'd be
on
great.
that.
And I had a question among town administrator. Professional development, it goes up from 250 to 1,500, and I just was curious, do you know of something that's coming up?
Town administrator, 250 to 1,500 is what we had in the current year. I didn't change it.
Oh, I see, okay.
250 is the actual from the FY18.
Or 205 is the actual, right?
205 is the actual, sorry. 250 is what was budgeted in FY18. We used $205 of that, 250. In FY19, we increased it to 1,500.
Right, I remember doing that.
Right now, I just kept it with that. We can discuss it, but
Yeah.
I just kept it.
Okay, I was just
the
curious if you saw something coming
Right.
down the line, some
Yep.
fantastic workshop that you were
Right,
signing up for.
yeah. So that is that one. I'm trying to add, Carpenter Karst Library sent me a draft today. They may still tweak it a little bit or do some things, but I put in their
4%,
figure. Yep,
4%, yeah.
yep, so I put that figure in.
I'm trying to meet with the cemetery.
Yeah, I was just pulling up that one, yep. Okay, the county tax, I put that figure in because usually you factor in about a 3% increase. So we usually don't get that figure until later on, but for budgetary purposes, I just,
Did you get something from the RPC?
yes.
Yeah, because I think that went up too, a little bit.
Actually, ours went down a slight
Oh,
bit.
oh,
Yep.
okay.
$21.
Yep, ours went down a slight bit.
I think the percentage got raised, but
Yeah, it's based on like,
because our population.
Yep,
yeah,
it's per capita.
Per capita, yeah.
You'll see in the Conservation Commission, the Natural Resources line, 8,000, we have gotten some letters of support from other groups supporting that. So Anyway,
Okay,
again, this
good.
is just for your purposes
Yeah.
to sort of digest it, ask me questions. If there's anything you want more information on, you can do that. And then I'll be working on the revenue side to get that prepared too for next week.
All right.
Kind of gives you a good starting point, and we don't
And-
have any.
Sorry.
Big
The
budget.
income side is are you close on that?
The revenue side, that's the piece that
Revenue,
we're
yeah.
going to work on. Yeah, that
Okay.
I'm going to continue to work on more, but
You said some of the ones in the yellow you haven't got updated yet. Workers' comp and
I've given the workers' comp, that's all part of the insurance RFP that were the
Okay,
proposals that we
okay.
received. So that's another piece that I want to talk to you guys about. I need a select board member to be part of the sort of the committee that's reviewing it. We don't have to be reviewing it together all at the same time, but you can, I've got 3 hard copies.
Have you already gotten proposals?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
oh,
yep.
oh, okay.
Yep. So they were due on Wednesday. And so now it's our time to actually really be going through these and so that we're comparing apples to apples and making sure that if we have questions, we'd want to bring in any of the agents to kind of answer those questions. But
So it might be a good time just to sort of mention, we're hoping there's a select board member who might be willing to just look them over and, make a list of questions, or so that even if that just got forwarded to Renee, then she could say, oh, this is what other people saw.
even if we can be looking at them independently first, making our own notes of questions that we want to ask, and then coming together and maybe talking about that before we actually reach out to the insurance agents, that might be a good, efficient way of doing it. So let me know.
And you just have hard copies?
I just have hard copies.
Okay.
Yep.
We could scan it, right?
And we could, they're booklets. It'll be a little trickier, but we could do
If
it.
need be.
Yep.
I'm willing to take one and look at it, I guess.
Okay.
Well, what would be good is if you took all 3 and then, you know what I mean? Then you're doing
Well,
a
there's only
comparison.
2 companies that ended up.
Oh, only 2,
Yeah,
okay.
including.
There's 3 copies of 2 things, so
Okay.
there's 6
Yes.
hard copies.
Oh,
Yeah,
Right, you
all right.
got it.
Yeah, okay.
There we go.
So
So,
that would, it would be helpful, but it would be good if you had, looked at them both and
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of said,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I said
Great.
one, but I meant
Yeah,
one
okay.
of each.
right. Perfect.
That would be helpful. Thanks,
right.
Tom.
So the next is the capital narrative. And again, we've looked at that, but
Yeah, and that, I just want to say that's very helpful, that narrative.
Good.
There's a lot of good information in there.
And as I've been meeting with the department heads, I've started to try to add some things that we want to, but there's more things to add. And I know you guys talked about a few things
Yeah.
at the last meeting that I still have yet to add more information. So this will be a document that we continue to revise leading up to, I think it's the January 21st is when we have our public hearing for the capital improvement plan and capital budget. So we'll be continuing to revise this as we go through it, but it's something that good to be looking at as we're talking about the departments and
Yeah.
doing the budget presentations. Yeah.
One thing that came up when I was meeting with Renee and Mike is that this narrative is really helpful. The thing that is difficult is that we don't have, and when we look at the capital budget itself, we don't, I think maybe you did add it now though, right? So what we don't have is how much is in the fund currently. And when we look at that summary page, which I think is the next item that we'll look at, we'll see those numbers. It might be helpful even in the narrative to make an extra line in there that says how much we have in there.
To show what the reserves are.
Yeah.
So there's another page of a capital improvement plan that kind of makes it go out a few years. It's a little harder. I'm trying to put things in front of you that are a little easier
Right.
to read right now, and then I
Yeah.
can make those changes and you can see them later. So I'm sort of doing it in steps.
Yeah.
But that one has a column. I showed
Yes.
it to you at the meeting where the capital reserves are. I
Yeah.
have input all of that information.
You put it in already, right?
Yeah, I put it in
saw
already.
Yep.
But I also sent you, included in this, in your Dropbox, is from Joan, the capital reserves,
Yes.
what you guys approved at the end of this past June.
and what's in their total. So from previous years as
Yeah.
well. And
Right.
when we get
Yeah.
to that, I'd like to that we could have a conversation about the whole purpose of this capital improvement plan.
So that's something that you do each
This is
early July. You
This
do
is-
that approval of, so Joan and Missy come and
Yeah.
they present what the reserves
Is
are.
this number 3E?
Yes, what you're looking at right now.
Yeah,
Yep.
I actually made a copy of it because I like
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys, you see this once a year. You see
Yeah.
it in June. What came out of that meeting, I did talk to Missy and Joan and to see if they could send that, because not only for you, for your benefit, but for the department heads, when they're only seeing it once a year or maybe thinking about it, they sort of forget what they have or forget that there is money in reserves when they're trying to plan their budgets. So they are going to try to send something out on maybe a monthly or quarterly basis so that we know, because you can charge something to that line. So even if it shows on June 30th, those are the balances.
Yeah.
It's possible something's been charged to those lines.
Since then.
Yeah, since
Yeah, yeah,
then.
yeah.
So it's good information for them to get on a more regular time during the year.
You know, I'm just looking under tree planting. On the beginning of 2017, we had 5,000, so we must have put 5,000 in, and we've used up a little bit. But according to this, as of the end of
June
June
30th, yeah.
of this year, we had 3,200 left.
Right.
So that might be something that we could use.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So we got it, and then we'll see in the Conservation Commission line, there's a tree planting one.
Yes,
Too,
another
and that
one,
one I think
yeah.
has been used, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna double check in the current year. I have that information down here. But those are all things that I think, once they start the capital budget, we've been making improvements as we've gone along, so there's more room to improve, but that would be something that would be helpful to the department heads as well as all of you and for myself and Joy as we are trying to plan the budgets.
Yep.
So I put that in your packets just so you can be looking at that too. One of the things that I added as we met with a highway, and he'll be here the next time to talk about it, is there's a screen plant in here. Before it was, I think it was the crusher and now screener and crusher, but now it's a screen plant was what's been identified as most helpful. And I know the fire department is also working on their capital plan, so once I meet with them, we can make any adjustments are needed to after that, and going by department, there's something that you
There
look
are a
through here.
couple of vehicles on here that are either sold or paid off. I think the international truck was still on there.
Which one?
The one that we traded, I believe.
The 2010? No, we still have the 2010. We traded the 2012 or 13.
Yeah, one later.
This one,
Couple fire trucks on there that we don't have.
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll go through that. So the 2010 is something that he's holding on to for now. It's still been working. So
It says it's running good, right?
yeah. So right now I've moved it to a FY21 perhaps replacement, but he's just kind of reevaluating each year, and if it's still running good, then and he's not having to do a lot of maintenance or a lot of repair work, then he's holding on to it. So.
One of the things that I'll wait until we're
Yeah.
finished with this, but
Okay. All right. So that's the narrative. And then what you see in the town report and what we do once we decide. So when we have our January 20th meeting and we decide exactly what we are going to transfer in what's going to be in the capital budget for FY20, this summary here shows all of the things. Right now, this is what we have slated, but again, this document's going to change until we get to that point in January.
So in that document, FY20 transfer,
Yeah.
that's what we already have slated to.
That's what we
obviously
have
you gotta
currently slated.
Pay for, well, we've got paving.
Some of
and,
them
yeah,
are payments and some of them
standard
are
things.
saving towards
Right.
future replacement.
Some you have to pay.
Right,
We
yeah.
could say.
Some
we
are
can't say
some aren't
no.
options.
Right.
Yeah. And then if you go down to the bottom left-hand corner, it shows by department exactly what the total is for the transfer.
Yep. Yep.
And so, and then to the right of the FY20 transfer, sometimes you can apply capital reserves towards the total of whatever you need, or you can apply impact fees or grant
Yeah.
funds, and then your total on the far right is what the actual amount that you're trying to save for FY20. But it can be
You know,
through the form.
it's interesting.
4 different
So a
forms.
portion of them are not optional.
Right, yep, there's a good portion that aren't optional.
And, you know, just over the last, I don't know, I'll just say 10 years, we've moved from ideally saving a little bit, then buying a truck, and then, you know, maybe having it all paid for. I don't know if we were ever at that point, but most of it paid for. Now we're into this leasing
On
piece.
some of the things.
Yeah, well, on police vehicles, on
A lot of
trucks
the
for
highway.
highway.
And the
So-
utility.
Yeah, so,
Trucks.
you know, that's a challenge, because interest rates are
Yeah.
working their way up. And it would be good to sort of swing the
Yeah, that's what I
pendulum
was gonna
just a little
suggest.
bit.
When we look at
Yeah.
that, I mean, it's all zeros. We're not really saving anything towards it. So, I mean, on many items.
Right, as far
Right.
as, yeah, yeah, and so that's something that we want to talk about is,
Yeah.
do we want to start moving to that where there's gradual savings
Yeah.
towards the next
So-
replacement?
In my simple-minded things, I look at, just like we saw with Mike, saying, hey, here's an older truck, but, you know, it's still running pretty good. Let's push it another year. Let's go another year. And I always say that with the police vehicles, you know, can we stretch it another year? Even the paving, I mean, I know it's not, people don't like to hear it, but, you know, we've been spending $250,000 each year for paving. And, you know, I came down the Hollow Road this week, and, you know, I went down a couple of roads. They're in pretty good shape. I'm sure there's a couple that need a little work, but, you know, potentially in a year, here or there, we could sort of tighten some of our capital. And doesn't mean not necessarily spend it, but maybe take that and put
Exactly.
it toward, you know, the next time. It'll take a little bit of it and put it toward the next time. So we have just a little bit more to utilize, and that also gives us flexibility. So a year later or 2 years later, we've saved a little bit, and, you know, maybe it won't be a truck we have to buy. Maybe it's something else and we have that flexibility.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons that the truck, we're able to save it, is that we really have been operating with a 3-person crew. We have 4 trucks.
Yeah.
It's not getting
Yeah.
the same mileage.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's another reason also that I think tracking, when we're looking at fuel, at the dollars, that if we're really tracking mileage and fuel consumed, number of gallons consumed as opposed to dollars, because those rates are always going up, then that was part of my request about energy efficiency is, okay, well, you know, what are we, you know, using less fuel? Is there ways we can use less fuel? But let's not just look at the dollars. Let's look at how much fuel we're using, and
Right. Well,
See
then we
what-
can measure how we're
we
doing.
can measure how we're doing.
Yeah, versus the dollars. The,
Yeah, you
the
can't-
dollars could go up, but we may be doing better.
Right.
We don't know
right.
that.
We might be using less.
Oh, I mean, I believe Mike has the mileage all tracked
Yeah.
on.
Yep,
Yeah.
he's got everything tracked.
Right,
on
but
it.
so when he goes to do the budget, or when any of us go to do the budget, we just tend to look at how many dollars we spent last year. And it would be a little more accurate to look at how many gallons we used and project what the cost of the fuel is. Or if you know that the fuel was $3 a gallon last year and we anticipate that it might be going up to $4, we can use that. I just
Yeah,
want to have a reference point that's in something that we can measure. And because the cost of fuel is always changing
It's
so
always
much,
changing.
or the amount of salt. You know, if we know we used 10 tons of salt and it was $200 a ton, and this year it's going to be $300 a ton, then and I think Mike does
Mike
that.
does
I
that.
think that's what I was going to say. I
But
think that's
well, I think he
kind
does
of
that
his-
for the salt, but I'm not sure that the departments really do that on the fuel stuff. So
Ours is, could we track it on our credit card? They can just send an email to them, they'll send back how many gallons.
how many gallons. There's probably some consistency.
well, that's the thing is and on a year. I mean, if you have 500 calls or 600 calls, and how many what's the
I think that, it does complicate it for the highway department. It depends how much snow and.
Right,
so
right.
There's some variability in there, but I'd agree that it would be nice to just equate it to gallons and then we just look at what we think project what the cost will be and.
It would be interesting to have the information, how many miles do you put on trucks
yeah.
over the course of a year? I mean, that would be as simple as I need, really.
Yeah.
Well, and then you can really get an understanding of the difference between, a winter when we think there's no snow, but they've gone out more times because there's ice.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the case a couple years ago.
Yeah.
When we look at that summary, and now we're into this, I love this chart too. When we said, there's some of the capital that we have to pay for, some are buildings and some are leases, and some we're doing because we think it's the right thing to do. And you can almost see it on these charts too. Although things in equipment, probably some of that is that
So equipment.
this is all debt, so this has nothing really to do with the capital. They don't quite match up.
This
This is
is-
what we owe and
This
what
is
we
what we
have
owe.
to pay.
So that's vehicles, equipment, that's buildings, everything, our trackers. So if you go down, we put this all on one page so that you can see it, is a list of the highway department. We have the highway garage, we have the police station. So if you see in debt service in our general fund expenditures, and debt service are the things that are greater than a 5-year repayment.
Yep.
That includes the highway garage, the police station, and the solar trackers currently.
Yep.
Everything else is in our capital budget. So here's the list of the equipment that we're paying on currently is listed down below here.
Water and wastewater, that's debt too, right?
It's debt too,
Yeah.
even though it's not from our general fund, it's
Right.
an enterprise fund. It's
Yeah.
it's debt with the town of Hinesburg. So we just
That's how they
that was a
measure debt.
question.
If it's more than 5,
Yeah.
did you say more than 5 years?
So if it's greater than 5 years, it shows in our debt service. That's how
Okay.
we do it in our general fund expenditures. But this shows everything. That's not anything that we have that we're paying on currently should be reflected in here.
If you show that bar chart again, go
Yep.
up. Al, it looks like we can fit you guys in 2048.
There you go.
Found our place.
Maybe as early as 2045.
Maybe as early as 2048.
I thought it was really 2038.
So we've had this before, this chart, but you didn't always see the background information.
Yeah.
So I had Joy updated this. Well, we did it in advance of town meeting in February, and then because the numbers change when the bond they resell the bonds, so I had her adjust all the payments to make sure we had the current amortization schedule for everything. And so that's all reflected in here, so you can see it on one page. And
Will some of these payments change a little bit as interest rates change? Some of the bonds?
the bonds, what the bond bank does is they so if they have the series like 2013, they went out and sold those bonds, and then they got better rates. And so, yes, our interest rate changes, and perhaps the repayment schedule will change. Eventually, we may pay something off a little quicker than we'd anticipated because it's a lower rate. So with the bond bank, anything that we have with
they
that.
can go for lower rates, but they don't necessarily say, hey, is anyone going to buy a lower rate for a higher rate? It doesn't go the other way.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Where it's either going to stay the same or go lower
Yeah.
for us with the bond bank. It's not going to increase.
So I'm thinking that bar chart is going to be a little bit adjusted soon because the water, wastewater is
Yeah.
likely going to see
Right.
a big jump.
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. This is just what we have today, what we are
Right.
paying on right now. This is not forecasting anything in the future. This is what we are today so that you can see it when you're thinking in terms of decisions that we have to make in the near future. You can look at this and say, by state statute, you can go I think, up to 10 times greater than your grand list in debt, that's a significant chunk. We don't really need to exercise that.
I think
but-
we looked at that and we said we're in
Yeah.
good shape, but
Right.
doesn't necessarily
Right.
give the green light to go any farther.
Right, so,
This is good.
I'm just trying to get information here that you can be using as we go through this process. And again, a lot of this will change. As we make decisions and add things or adjust things, but this is these are working documents
So
for you.
as I was looking at this, if that's all right, I sort of said, well, what in my mind do I see as potential items that are going to add to that bar chart? And not because Al is here, but I said, I don't know, the fire department, the, medical piece, there might be something there. Water, wastewater, so that we know is coming. I said the Richmond sidewalk, kind of put that out there as a possibility. And, it wouldn't necessarily be the one that was designed, but something
Something about
potential.
life or something.
Potentially, particularly if we can get some grants and things like that, the solar on the Newtown garage in VEC territory. I think we could probably get something that it may add debt, but it would pay for itself as it's going. I wondered if there was, I'm just throwing stuff out there, like a town vehicle that is one used by all the town departments. So instead of the highway crew taking their big truck to Williston to pick up a part, they might take something a little more efficient.
Like a pool vehicle.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. And then I was
Mike would drive a car.
yeah. And then I was wondering, thinking of the rec, and potentially something there too, an expansion. We talked about a small little building there and things. But how are people going to get across Patrick Brook?
Well, I think Grabowski
Eventual-
is supposed to build a bridge
Right. As he expands.
in this next phase that he's
Okay.
doing. I think he's already been put on notice by,
Okay. All
by
right.
the Trails
so
Committee.
I'll cross that one off then. I thought, it was something. Okay. But I don't know. Those are just sort of some
Rec
things that.
is like equipment, it's like we talked also about buying equipment and doing all our mowing ourselves, for instance. Mm-hmm. Maybe, which might be part of the rec thing.
Yeah.
Sidewalk plow.
That's another thing.
I thought we had one of those.
The equipment line just drops off on 2002 because that's our current payments.
2022.
Right.
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah.
But, in theory, we probably would have that amount of debt always for equipment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so
right.
that yellow line really,
Yeah.
we should,
Yeah.
we can in our minds just
Right.
know that it's there.
And what we talked about, actually, that we could expand on this just for your own reference and go back earlier years
Yes.
just to see the trend of that.
Yes, that would be
so
really-
we figured we could work on that between now and town meeting, to have that information.
Cool.
And just to see where we've been before and, what it's looked like so that you can notice trends.
Yeah, well, it's hard to, I think seeing the fluctuation, the fact though that the dollars are so much less just could be reflection of inflation.
Yeah.
So, but. Cemetery, I've been trying to suggest to them that they need to think about a capital.
Yeah.
And specifically for.
Well, just they're very much. It appears that they are concerned with operational, but there may be the need to do some capital investment in terms of if they're going to open up a new cemetery or how just to encourage them that that's an option to think about, and whether they are going to do that through raising the rates for plots,
Right.
or whether they want to develop a capital budget. Refurbishing the fountain is my own little,
Yeah.
but
Any other discussions on the capital?
well, I think it does bring up the question about whether we're leasing or whether we're buying.
Yeah.
And so that equipment line, I think, is maybe less because of the leases.
Yeah.
And because the leases don't show up as debt, right?
They do.
Oh, they do?
Yep,
Oh,
but they're
okay.
all in here too.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah.
lease is really, it's a purchase.
Yeah, okay.
It's just the name, the term
Right.
used for
Yeah.
that.
And what makes it a lease? The fact that you pay over a certain number of
So you get the vehicle and you don't pay on it until the following year. So you have that year that you're not paying on it. And then most of the vehicles are a 3-year lease. So you have it paid off in 3 years. We have very few, like the pumper was a 5-year purchase. So it was paid off over 5 years. Most of them are 3 years.
It certainly
Some of
worth doing
the
some.
highway vehicle, actually not most of them, the highway, like the trucks and things are 5-year, but the police cruisers and smaller pickups are 3 years. Yep.
I mean, the SCBA's are a lease. 5-year? Yeah.
So that's all. Anything that we have payments on currently is listed in here.
Did anybody else have any thoughts on capital that, they sort of see coming besides maybe the 3 or 4 at the top that I said?
The wastewater upgrade
Yeah.
is going to be something coming, and the water.
I
just
think
talked
I was
about.
right. The sidewalk plow is something to consider. It's not going to run forever. It's kind of a
Or at all.
Yeah.
I think we might want to consider looking at our culvert inventory and bridges and seeing where it would be possible to upgrade those to the appropriate sizes. And
I
that's
think-
part of there's a grant program now, but we can also be putting money into.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of our municipal roads general permit, and then
Right.
all of the grant funding that's
Yeah.
doing that. So they're identifying segments of hydrologically
Hydrologically
connected
Okay.
portion segments of roads.
Yeah.
And so that's what we've been doing, the grant funding, and then the highway crew have been out working on those. So they've had to prioritize those segments of work to get done. And so they've been doing quite a few over the last couple of years.
But we could be putting some in our capital budget, and
There is some in there for culverts.
yeah, there is for culverts,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but
Yeah. And for this building, I mean, I think we have a small amount, but do we think with this year we'll want to put more in?
I think we should definitely start
Yeah.
putting some more in. We did get the quotes for the roof, and we've got three quotes, and I think we came up around, was the lowest one around 5,000, I think, 5,000 and change.
Okay.
whoa,
But that's,
Don't say that's reasonable because people listen to that.
so what that is, that's replacing, we have the slate shingles, have some of them come off. So they'd go up there with a lift, they'd replace those, they'd also check to see what else
Yeah.
needs to be done. And then we do this on a regular
Okay.
basis.
Yeah.
So that it won't be as expensive, but it'll also keep the roof in good shape. So
Tie it in and do the church at the
Yeah, I
same
do
time.
have a quote coming for the fire station too, so Polly's working on that now, but I don't have it yet. They were supposed to have it 2 weeks ago, but
so those are all the things that we were trying to get in, so that we could be thinking if we
And we
what we need
talked
to be
about the
planning.
trees, which seemed, again,
Yeah.
these are
Yep.
not big, 5,000 or a few
Right.
thousand.
Right.
And we've been doing sidewalks and building that up a little bit, so
Yeah.
I think, we probably want to continue to do that.
Right.
well, you know, if, well, you already mentioned solar, but, I mean, if we want to try to get to improving our public buildings, then
There's some small investment in that. That we could
investment in
be-
that and
Even put some money aside
Yes.
so it's available.
so it's a you know, if it's a capital improvement plan, then we're working towards better energy efficiency and reducing our heating costs,
I know that
fossil fuel use. Then I think we're going to be moving towards.
the Energy Committee has been focused, they're, starting to look at all of the town buildings, and so we
Great.
sent them a lot of information.
Yeah.
And they're also looking at the vehicles, so they got a list of all of our vehicles, and then information on the buildings, and the walkthrough I had with Efficiency Vermont last year, I sent them all that report and everything, so.
Well, I think Lot 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in general, if we're going to have we have these categories of buildings, the solar, maybe we want to have public land, capital improvement for public land, so that, if there's some major work that has to happen on some trails or something, I mean, and it doesn't mean that we wouldn't look for grants or other opportunities, but recognizing that this capital plan is really for protecting our assets. And so looking at things that way.
Are there any vehicle?
And
Sorry.
stormwater could be another category along with wastewater, stormwater.
Well, I mean, they are
Stormwater,
in
we
here.
are saving
Yeah.
for the stormwater
Right.
planning and things.
Right.
Yep.
So it's just not showing up on this graph yet,
On
but
the
it
bar
may
chart.
be.
Well, on the bar chart.
Because
it
we
means-
have-
On the bar chart,
Yeah.
right, because
It's
we
not
haven't.
debt.
Not debt,
Right,
yes,
saving.
but,
Yeah.
yeah. All right,
so-
we're looking at debt. I'm still
right,
thinking
right.
capital.
So in the town administrator capital transfer, we've been doing, I think we have,
It's 2,500.
yeah, we had 5,000 one year, we did 2,500 in the current year.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we've got to decide what we're going to do for this FY20.
Every last couple of years, I've said, one of my goals as we do this is to make sure we're investing in what we already have.
Absolutely.
And I think I've fallen in to the sort of false where, like, you look at that stormwater, and last year we had a little more in there. We're trying to get the budget reasonable, so we took a little bit out, which is a good approach. But when you look at some of this capital investment, if you think you're going to spend it at some point anyways, it probably is a good idea to just keep incrementally
Absolutely.
adding to it.
Yep.
And in the end, another 25,000 across 3 or 4 or 5 of these will make a big difference in 3 or 4 years.
But why this is important in front of you is just so you can see where we're at. And while last year wasn't the best year to add a lot, this is a good year to be really thinking about it. And you want to have more level rates rather than these jumps. And so
Yeah.
we don't want to make the mistake of being higher last year. Okay, let's offset it and, let's not spend any, stay right at where we're at. You want to sort of level things out and be thinking incrementally, saving a little bit this year now for something that's coming in the future, and then a little bit more next year.
And that sort of plays right into the argument about saving for vehicles and things.
Yeah.
So you don't, have these. The leases allowed it to sort of balance out. And
Yeah, so
So-
the bar chart's a good visual to see, okay, so FY19 and 20, it's a little higher, but then if everything stayed the same in 21, it's lower, so we could incrementally be adding some other things on there, and other things are gonna be coming off. So,
all right, Al, there's nothing you're gonna drop on us, okay? Because you're still gonna meet with Renee.
It's an
Yeah.
Yeah.
plan,
Okay.
We're just
Yeah.
gonna overhaul the capital plan.
yeah,
Okay.
and he sent, we we got to sit down for about 2.5 minutes before he got called out. So we each got a copy of the budget and things. So I incorporated that also into the expenditure thing of what
Okay,
their
yeah.
budget was.
Okay, good.
We just haven't gotten to really talk about it. Yeah. But it's
All right,
reflected
well,
in
this
what
is
you have.
helpful, thank you. Anybody have any other questions, or?
What was the last year of payments on that 2010 international dump truck?
What was the last?
The last year.
Does it say in the narrative?
I'm just thinking if it might be an
Yeah.
opportunity to put a little aside.
That's why I highlighted it so that we could start saving.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then hold on to that truck as long as it goes, and it at least cuts on to the,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
off the top.
I agree.
That's why I
yeah.
That's why we
highlighted the
weren't gonna do
2010 so that we could maybe start transitioning into that saving ahead of time,
Right.
perhaps. And that would be one to do it on. So
All right.
what time are we at now?
We're a little behind.
10 of 8.
Yeah.
I
think.
Oh,
But that's all right.
sorry, Lisa.
No, it's all right. So next item on the agenda is looking at this document. We have errors and omissions. It looks kind of scary. So this is Lisa
This is Lisa.
from Nimerick, who's working on our grand list, I guess.
Our
So we have a document in here, and at first I was like, oh, what does this mean? Does this mean this is all coming off the grand list? So,
Every year at this time, in the past it's been Marie that's brought this to you on errors and omissions.
so maybe you could just tell us what this is and what we're doing.
So every year we have the abstract grand list, which is all the property values as of April 1st of each year. And they're changeable through notices and grievance process and all of that. And then usually in July, we have, this is the as-billed entity, and this is the number that we have. And that's the number that you guys get when you're setting your tax rate. And that's the as-billed number. But over time, like, oh, that was mistakenly done, or oh, we didn't get this information, or one of them, PVR sent us the wrong numbers. So we have to make a change to the grand list. And errors and omissions are just a way of reconciling where you were, where you are, and how you got there, so that you can reconcile, this was the grand list we sent out, these are the changes that we made, and in the process, when we make a change to a grand list value, we then send a revised tax bill, which changes the taxes due, and you have the trifecta, which is, this is the amount that was billed according to the grand list. Missy has tax admin that shows the status report. This was what was truly billed, and these two things reconcile. And then you have what's been paid and what is still delinquent or what is still due. And you want those three things to always be reconciling.
Okay.
And this is a way that that happens.
And so these all have gone down. Do they ever go up?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Is
wondering
this-
that there's not a property on here that would have gone up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have a house that got a permit 3 years ago,
It never got.
and they didn't build, and you stopped looking, then all of a sudden they build, but you didn't realize they had built until after the notices went out.
Yeah.
But oh yes, we still have until till December 31st. If we found something that we neglected to put on the grand list, we could still put it on.
Okay.
And the biggest hit here was the covenant restrictive housing.
Yeah.
The 30%. So by statute, everything that is covenant restrictive with the housing trust or with another charitable organization, the statute dictates that they must be discounted by 30 to 40%. And the statute reads 30 to 40% because Burlington has some that by law have to be 40% in Burlington, but everybody else in the state, if you don't have anything else that directs you, you get to choose 30 to 40. So we only discount them 30%.
Well, didn't we know that ahead of time?
What happened with these is when we were producing the property record cards that we have in the town clerk's office now, these records were run, so you just ran cost on them again. And in the
Okay.
condos, you have to manually change their value, and that was overlooked, and that's how this happened. So only one of these people called
And said something's wrong.
and said something, but you really can't just go after
Right.
equity above all. So
And
that's
are
why
these
this happened.
Which ones are these? The ones,
Doesn't matter. They're covenant restrictive not because of where they're located or how they were built. They were just the ones that were bought with help from the land trust.
right, so are they scattered around town?
These are all condos.
Okay,
So they
You
could
don't
be
have-
Lyman Meadows. They could be
Green Street?
Green Street those are rental.
condos.
Those are rental apartments.
okay,
So anybody at Lyman Meadows, there's single family homes up in Birchwood.
okay,
Sunny
Some in
Acres.
That has-
Silver Street.
Yeah, the townhomes on Silver Street.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
But that was, this was,
Well, they're all about the same, so
they're
they must
absolutely
be,
the same.
yeah. So the overall values
that's what-
are all the same.
That's what killed us this year. And then there's one for 98,300 Noonan, and that's a person that came in 2017 during grievance. And it was when they had the state is now in charge of septic laws and what can and cannot be approved. And it was much broader what was allowed. And we said, no, that at this point, we're assuming, unless you can prove otherwise, that every lot, that it is a buildable
Yeah.
lot. And he did go through and have an engineer relook at it.
And said,
And he missed the boat. He had to eat it on the reappraisal year. And then this year, he didn't get his information to us in order to hit the grievance period. But he was correct. It is not a buildable lot. So instead of, well, you missed your statutory deadline and you'll have to wait another year. He already waited 1 year too many.
Yeah,
So I spoke with Renee and we thought that the fair and equitable thing was to make that change because it's correct.
and Comcast, there's the value of of that utility.
Comcast, we get the values every year from Property Valuation and Review. We didn't get the numbers for Comcast, so we called the state. We said, we need the numbers for Comcast. They sent us the report for Comcast. They sent us the prior year's value. So that's why that one was wrong.
And the Tebow farm was conserved.
No, they transferred 2 lots. We picked up those lots and the house is built on them. But when we picked those up, we failed to reduce the parent lot when we picked up the inactives.
So you said, we took it, I think you described it as a hit. Is this a significant amount? I don't remember how it was last year.
It's not. It adds up. So you had net change $759,000, which in Hinesburg can be a house and a half.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So on your overall grand list, it's not a huge number.
Okay.
I have a question. If a portion of a property was sold, and the whole property was on the grand list on April 1st, and then part of it gets sold, because on one side of the road it got sold, and then there's all the remaining acreage on the other side of the road. That's going to have a new value.
If it's sold, if the closing was after April 1st,
Yeah.
it happens next year. So what we like to do is as soon as a subdivision is created, we'll say somebody does a 4-lot subdivision, we'll create 3 inactive lots and keep them in our system so they're there and ready to go. And then we'll pick them off. So if they had a 2.6 acre lot, one of the inactive lots sell, on the parent lot we'll adjust one house site plus the residual. Usually that's what happens. This didn't happen in this case. But if somebody has a larger lot that's administratively subdivided because the road goes through, so they don't have to go through a subdivision. But
Right.
when we do transfers, we read the deeds, and the deed will say a portion of, and then describe what's being sold. And sometimes it'll say the west or the east. Then we go look at the tax map and say the calculated area over here is 2 acres. The calculated area over there is 3.1. And at that point, we transfer whatever parcel the house was with.
Right.
And then we create a new lot for that administratively.
So that new lot, which the house was on one side, and then will be
New value
new value not until April 1st.
next year.
Right.
And
And do you look at the asking price of things when you're putting a value on it? Or
No.
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
I look at, this is our land schedule. It was created for the 2017 grand list and here's our land schedule. And the grade of the land is about what's physically possible, what's financially prudent, and what's legally permissible. Those things taken. Can it be developed? It's a building lot. Is it steep? Is it wet? And that's a grade issue. So
So you don't
the asking
necessarily look-
price, we're not going to go there.
Right, but what about and you don't look at what fair market value is of other lots, other comparables at all?
Nope.
Okay.
That's you can't go and say
Use
this
two-
is
two
selling
different
for
systems.
$200,000. How do we get this one there too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We say this one was a grade of 1.0 and
Yeah.
it's very similar to that one. This one's a grade of 1.0.
Because that's how you build the grand list to begin with. So you can't come up with a different system.
Well, you can't go sales chasing,
Yeah.
but that's what this equalization study's about.
Yeah.
So your goal is to get it fair market value and
Yes.
stay there, but
Yeah.
your other charge on the other side of that is equity. So you have to have one best practice and standard methodology. This is how we do it. This is how we always do it. So if somebody comes in from Silver Street with a lot and somebody else created a new lot on Silver Street, this new lot created needs to reflect value the same as that one. And that's what a standard method and standard practice is all about.
It would only be different if it was incredibly steeper or.
It could be
There's
really
other
wet,
reasons,
or
yeah.
it could
Yeah.
not be built on, or it had development rights have already been sold off.
Yeah.
That's part of the grade. Yeah.
Okay, is there an action we need to take on
You
this?
need to approve the errors and omissions.
Okay.
And what happens is the state says, this is your education rate. And according to their calculations, there's this much money is due from residential and from
Okay.
non-residential. And they're going to look at what we sent them in August. But if that number's changed, especially if we reduce the grand list, we want to be able to say, here's the errors and omissions report that was approved by the select board. This is indeed our new number, and we're only going to pay you our liability based on this new number.
Right, so their payment gets adjusted too.
Yes.
Along with ours.
That's the other way to look at it when you're losing $700,000 worth of value
Yeah.
and you're thinking it's $14,000 worth of taxes, but to the town of Hinesburg, it's only a third of that.
Yeah, or a
Right.
quarter to a third, right. Okay. Good point. Any other questions? So we need a motion to approve the errors and omissions of the grand list as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right. Any questions? Or Lisa, do you have anything else? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that motion passed. We're through with item 4, now item 5.
All right, so this is the assessor budget, so Lisa's also gonna be here for that, even if typically I send it out to department heads, they fill it out, and I filled it out just because it's, Lisa and I talked about it. The NIMRIC, from what I understand, the NIMRIC contract is not going to change, it's gonna stay consistent as it was last year. And so there's some notes on the sidebar, on the right-hand sidebar. The current fiscal year, we'd put in 2,000 for Marie to transition out in case, so that she was able to work with Lisa for a little bit as they transitioned. So that's no longer needed for FY20. The supply budget, Lisa, what are your thoughts on that? Do you need the 250 to stay? Is there anything that you'll be?
I'm not sure how. When we got a lot of supplies for the
Right.
reappraisal. We
That's
bought most
why.
everything. We got new filing cabinet and
Yeah.
all that stuff during reappraisal. We used the reappraisal funds for that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, like, if I do postage, is that office supplies charged to the listers?
Postage goes on, that doesn't go in your budget.
Okay,
that
so the
goes-
only thing we really need up there for supplies are paper, toner, and postage, and I think that just goes right through office supplies
Yeah.
at the town. So
Okay.
I can't think of anything.
And so professional services is really, it's a contract, right?
No,
That's the NIMRIC contract
sorry.
broken
Yeah.
down on,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
that includes the The CAMA, the Marshall and Swift and all that stuff too with Ed?
Everything, I think,
Okay, that's all.
as far as I know.
Yep.
So we'll just leave it the same as last year, as we, you know, get
That's my,
get it under our feet, I guess
Yeah.
you'd say.
And you're here
Comfortable.
tonight because you have some office hours that you have in the evening, or?
No, I'm here tonight because it's select board meeting for errors and admissions
well,
and
she
the
would
budget.
normally be doing her
Yeah.
office hours earlier. She did
Oh,
her
okay.
office hours later today.
Oh, I didn't know if you
to
did
shift.
have evening office
No,
hours.
no.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, she just adjusted. She didn't come
Okay.
during the day
Yeah.
today.
But we will do whatever it takes to, if somebody has something and they really need to meet and they can't, we will always adjust for it, but usually
Yeah, okay.
it rarely comes up.
So,
So, I mean, so this is a good point. So now, you know, it's 1 day a week that you're here,
Mondays.
Mondays.
Monday.
And so we talked about this, I think, briefly, because this is under my bailiwick. And you know, I said, Jesus, anybody complaining, or have we heard any complaints? And not really. Maybe one
I haven't.
person. Yeah.
Nothing's-
I think
nothing's
maybe I
come
was
up to me.
talking to Missy. She thought, well, maybe one person. So there haven't been any issues or concerns. You know, they have to try to match. But you're saying, hey, if somebody can't quite make it on Monday.
Well,
you'll work-
Cheryl has my text.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is a question, somebody emailed me, this is
Yeah.
a question, and if I know there's a question here on my way to Richmond on Wednesday, I can stop in Hinesburg, check the email, take
Yeah.
care of it, and the other
Great.
part of it is sometimes I'm not here all day, but come permit time, I might have 3 NIMRIC guys with me
Yeah, yeah.
putting in. So
Yeah.
it's just like, here's where we are. It's really busy from whenever you send your tax bills out
Okay.
until
yeah.
after the state payments, the homestead declarations, and that's all dropped off. Hinesburg's a big current use town. Current use is now 100% certified.
Yeah.
So it's cleaning up it all. You know, it's like the highway department. In the winter,
Yeah,
there's snow. In the summer, there's this. So
yeah.
your job requirements are very rarely.
Flat. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So I guess unless anybody else has heard issues, you know, at this point, it seems like it's working very well. So,
So keeping everything the same
Yeah.
and just removing the 2,000, it's down 5%.
okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going home now.
Thank you, Lisa. Feel free to come any Monday night.
All right. Next item on the budget is number 6. And this is VTrans getting ready to do the turning lanes at CVU Shelburne Falls Road intersection. And in typical state fashion, they've got a huge document on how to do the work. And they have to go into rights of way. And some of it's temporary as they do construction, and some of it's permanent. I'm surprised there's not a huge crowd here because the state wants to take some of our right-of-way. How much?
6 square feet
6 square feet,
for permanent easement.
permanent. And then a very small portion.
For 313 square feet is a temporary easement for the construction.
we're putting up a fence and they keep coming in.
There you go.
I actually talked to Renee today because I was looking at the map that they provided, and I said, geez, they only gave us a little piece of the map. And
Yeah.
they're missing some of the things. And then Renee reminded me it's only 6 square feet. So that is the only section just to the north of the intersection is where
It's
that
town
must
property.
be Japreg property.
Yeah. Yeah, if you read down in the,
This tiny little,
That's
it
it.
talks about,
that's the whole thing.
if you get into this last document,
Way up there?
it talks
Yeah,
about
way
being
up
part of
there.
the same land and premises conveyed to the town of Hinesburg by the partial
That was-
decree of distribution
that's what I thought,
of the
too.
estate of Dora E. Japrags, dated December 2nd, 1991.
So that's just a little piece there.
I thought it was,
I'll just point out.
I
if-
assumed it was down there
I
right at the
assumed,
intersection.
yeah, I thought it was Shelburne Falls
So-
Road or something like that.
So they're doing this.
So
So
they
they
must-
are widening the road.
They're doing
Yes.
the same process with all the other landowners. Any landowner that's impacted by this is,
But I'm
they're going through the same
guessing
process.
how they're gonna impact Shelburne Falls and CVU, the Richmond Road, they must already have enough
I guess.
of their right of way there. So.
Well,
and
it's,
so
I
it-
mean, because this is a state right of way that they already
Yes,
have.
so they must have enough of it around the intersection itself.
Right.
Well, enough so it doesn't impact Hinesburg.
our land.
It's probably impacting other people.
Yeah.
This is any of the landowners along that route they're going to the same process.
Well, it's
Yeah.
a town right of way on CVU Road and Shelburne Falls Road, so they might be impacting those.
If they were, I would guess
Yeah.
we would have gotten, so I'm guessing they're not. So they must have a wide enough section there around that intersection. It just, in case anybody, it's gonna be difficult if anybody wants to protest this takeover of our property from the state. There's only 6 square feet, so you can only have one protester, just in case anybody was interested.
So it's near the, kind of near the top of the hill, but not quite.
Yeah, not quite, I think.
It's really coming down. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on a slope. 6
In the
square
slope.
feet is.
So,
It's below the old pond, though.
yes, it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's interesting to see.
No, it's not gonna impact any lupins up there, is it?
There's no lupins left.
No more lupins?
No, I don't think so.
There were some beautiful lupins
Yeah.
up there at one time. So anyways, that's it, and we have to sign it if we were to approve this.
Yep.
And we get $250 for the temporary and $250 as for the 6 square feet.
Maybe we should
No,
give them.
just once.
Is there any reason why we don't want to do this?
No, I think we want
This
those
is-
turning lanes.
This
That's
is just a
Really the only
procedural.
thing I looked at when I saw this.
So I need a motion to approve the request from VTrans regarding the Shelburne Falls Route 116 intersection
Yep, to provide easement rights.
to provide the easement rights,
Permanent and temporary.
permanent and temporary.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? So at this point, it looks like it's making its way. Hopefully
This is a good sign.
Yeah, this is a good sign,
It's
right?
supposed to be in 2019.
So all those in favor of approving the easement rights, say aye.
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 Aye, so that motion passed.
So I'll be passing this around. There's 2 copies of the same thing, so if you could sign both copies when this comes to you.
Next item on the agenda is town administrator report.
All right. Let me just. Okay, so this past week we had our budget meetings with all the departments, and each of you participated in that with your department that you had adopted. The fire department was postponed, as we mentioned, because they got a call. So we're going to try to do that maybe tomorrow, perhaps. The insurance proposals, they were due last Wednesday at 3, and we ended up receiving only 2. The sidewalk plow had a breakdown just as they were firing it up on Monday morning during the storm. It's had some sort of an electrical issue, had to be sent away. So when we put the updates on Front Porch Forum and Facebook, there was an incredible outpouring of support and help. And the most awesome thing, we were sitting there, all of a sudden Joyce says, there's a tractor that went by. We look out, and sure enough, and then someone else came in, so we had to meet with somebody. And then I went driving around town trying to find who it was, and ultimately found out it was Russell Spees. So I tracked him down to his house and thanked him. But he said it wasn't just him, that he had also noted that along Mechanicsville Road, someone had taken a snow blower and did a long section, and other people had shoveled in different parts. So it was a community effort. It was really, really neat. So that was definitely a wonderful example of the community we live in.
Well, I think it shows, and thank you for doing that. When you reach out, and I think we see this all the time here in Hinesburg, is when you need something done, and I'm sure, Tom, you'd say the same thing with the rec committee things, you ask, and typically people step up. So
Yeah.
that's very nice.
Yeah. And then in general, we're just becoming a little more budget focused right now. So a lot of our work and effort is gonna be just getting the budget materials together and continuing to revise them, meeting with people as we lead up to town meeting. The highway garage open house was very successful. We had a wonderful people that came. It was really neat, and we pulled off the surprise building dedication to Mike Anthony, and I think he was very touched.
And I'll say, and all the select board members were there. I walked out so happy. I thought it went so well. Just the whole thing, to be able to walk through the building, see the pride that team under Mike takes in their equipment, and it really is a great asset for the town, and will go along. It's good for 50 years. So.
And I want to say, I thought it was very well planned. It's easy for something like that to look like it's just thrown together, and this just was so smooth. It was so beautiful, and everything fell into place, and everything worked just the way it should, because somebody thought a lot about how it was going to go and did all the footwork that was necessary beforehand.
Yeah.
I was just so impressed about how many people that came and spent time on their Saturdays, and including all of you. But it was awesome. I think our first person that came was someone who had walked in, and they were upset about how things were done on plowing. And so I talked to the person for a little bit, and then I said, you know what, why don't you talk to Mike? Because they were pretty convinced that, sanding hadn't been done on their road or anything. I said, but, actually the trucks have computers in them. It shows them exactly where it was. And so he could sit down with you. So he brought her into his office and sat down in front of the computer. He pulled up the map of where they were and the times. It was wonderful. She learned so much, realized, wow, these guys just aren't just doing this.
They're not just filling the truck.
They really are organized and have a
around.
plan, and they think about this. And so that was wonderful. It made it all worth it. We had another person that wanted to just get up in the truck. And so, actually, Pat Maynard. Yeah. So she got up in there. I took a picture of her, and I sent it. Ray wanted a picture. I sent it to her. Hey, here's our newest highway maintainer. So, but it's a completely different perspective being inside that truck.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so high up, and they have a lot of computers and different things that they're having to control inside the truck while they're plowing the roads. So
Trying to
I have
be
no idea how he
safe.
does it.
I think that opportunity for people to actually be up there right next to these vehicles and see them and get up inside them and see what they really do, that there is a lot of thought and a lot of care and a lot of effort that goes into maintaining our roads. And so I think Saturday was a good opportunity for folks to see what they're getting from those currently 3 individuals.
Yeah.
So.
And if anybody's sort of listening, I think some people will be watching. On the way there, as you already heard me say a couple words there, the realizing that they really are first responders for Hinesburg, and while the police and the fire, they keep us safe. Probably the highway department, keeps us as safe because we're on those roads every single day with family and friends, and our roads are pretty safe, and we get up early in the morning, they're going to be taken care of. So
And if the police or fire or emergency have a call,
they're out there.
they're out there
sanding,
because they
yeah.
have to they have to
Yep.
get it taken care of for them.
So it really was a nice thing.
Let's see. The next 2 select board meetings are going to be the budget presentations. And so for each of you that met with your budget, you'll be there to sort of help advocate for your department and talk about, be able to explain it as well. We received the formal letter from Chief Koss of his impending retirement in June of 2019. So that official step sort of marks the process that you guys can be thinking about, what we typically have done. You form a committee and sort of identify what you're looking for in the next chief. And so you guys will be charged with sort of thinking about how you want that process to go and what it's going to look like.
Yeah, and I think the last two times we've gone and done this, it's gone pretty well. And so we'll have to talk about what the process will be. And my suggestion is, as we start that process and put together a committee, that we maybe have an open meeting, just prior to it, and let people in town sort of say, hey, here's what here's what I'm looking for, or here's how the police department could be better, or here's what's so good about it, or just sort of get some reinforcement of what the town would like to see, more of the same or something different. I don't know what it might be. And then that committee could go off and look at the job description and then, start that process. So it's, sorry to see Frank move on, but totally understand. He's going to continue to be on the fire department, so he's still going to be in town, which is great. But it's an opportunity to, if any improvements need to be made. I'm not saying any are, and I can't think of any, but it's a chance to sort of get some more involvement in that process.
That is the nice thing. He's not leaving the community. So
Right,
he's
that is
still
nice,
there,
yeah.
And he's going to be involved with the fire department still, and Hinesburg is what they call home. So.
That's great. Good for him.
So do we want to put any kind of timeline or talk about how we want to move forward? Because I know it's the end of June, I think, was his retirement. That's like tomorrow.
Yeah, it is like tomorrow, especially with that type of role. So
Yeah, it's a key
you really
role.
want to be thinking about that and having that committee sort of formed and sort of thinking about what that committee is going to be charged with in sort of an order of operations would be something you want to be thinking about now, and maybe hopefully by January have that identified.
Yeah, right. So 6 months is probably right. I mean,
Absolutely.
the town administrator took about that amount,
Yeah.
So I think putting together a rough timeline wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's something you might be interested in.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a one-page quick timeline, and
Yeah.
maybe you run it by Renee and
But,
sort
yeah,
of say, yeah.
yeah, and then we'd have at least something to talk
Yeah,
about.
right.
I'm
Yeah,
not
a
talking
starting
about.
point. Yeah,
I'm just
Yeah.
talking about a draft conversation starter.
right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
For us to all
Yeah.
figure out.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind, we've done this a couple of times, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
you've alluded to.
Yeah.
But
But it will be a challenge, right, to
Yeah.
get the right person.
Yep. So you want the time to be able to do that and give it good
yeah,
thought.
Yeah, because
With the
it
process.
it was a national search the last time for a police chief. I mean, as it was for the town administrator position as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
So it is,
Those are big roles that you want to really think about. And
which doesn't mean that it might not happen
Right.
closer to home.
Yeah.
yep.
Yep. Was Frank hired directly from California?
No,
He was here already.
You
he
said
was
Shelburne?
one of the
worked in Williston, I think.
people who was interviewed, and then he took a position in Williston. He moved here anyway.
Okay.
Took a position in Williston, and then came here.
All right.
was there?
Yeah. All right, good.
So that's all I had.
All right. Select board forum. I had a couple items, but I don't want to jump ahead. Okay.
I was just looking at the minutes of CSWD's meetings.
Okay.
And noticed they had, well, they had a retreat where they weren't talking about drop-off centers, but I did notice that they are thinking about needing to go for a bond for redoing their drop-off centers. And so
We're kind of redoing. the ones we
redoing
already
multiple
have.
ones of
Yeah.
them. Yeah. And so I just was hoping that we're not going to be lumped in there with
Yeah,
the
because
bond.
they've already put money.
Yes, they've already
the
put-
money.
Had money,
Yeah.
Yeah, they've had
300,000.
money, yeah,
They've had
yeah.
for a long time.
So, but I did notice that they're having a board meeting on December 19th at 6 p.m. at the Will. That's their whole full board meeting, 6 p.m. If any of us wanted to go.
Yeah, maybe through email we can
Okay, yeah.
remind us
And
about
yeah, it was interesting that the Richmond Select Board was concerned about them dropping their reuse centers.
Yep.
And so, did you read about that?
Yeah, I'd seen about that.
So that prompted me to read more minutes, and that's where I saw, oh my gosh, they're talking about all the drop-off centers.
Yeah.
So
that. And maybe that's an explanation of this. You know, if they're talking about doing this, they're sort of saying they all need to be redone,
Yeah.
brought into the
Right.
present, future requirements, whatever those might be. You know, better safety, different collection, and so, you know, maybe that might help explain them, you know, reluctance to just sort of put our old little shed there, you know, that they're like trying to look at the big picture.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's sort of what we
they
did
had
with
done.
this
They had
process.
definitely done some analysis about what percentage. Overall, at all the drop-off centers, you know, the leaf portion was, and the reuse zone, and the interesting thing was that some people were coming just to go to the reuse zone,
Yep.
and so that one of their concerns is traffic.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so they were, I think, part of their rationale for eliminating the reuse zones is that it would help address the
Yes.
traffic situation.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's interesting to read the minutes and get a better understanding
Yeah.
of how they're they are being very strategic about how they're going about doing things.
All right. And I'm going to bring up a couple things as maybe you were trying to do. So we have a number of letters that we've received on Lot 15, and I got several more. And certainly, I think the ones that are addressed to the entire select board are being sort of collected. And, you know, if or when we have another discussion about that, Renee had said more than likely you should put them all together in a document so that, you know, everybody can see what everybody else has said. It's all public record. And I've received some just addressed to me. Now, I don't know if they're just addressed to me or they've individually sent them to everybody. But I think what I'll be doing is forwarding them to Renee so that they're all collected in one place.
And if you could forward all, I mean, because I haven't always been copied on ones that you guys have all
Yes.
been copied on.
right, yeah.
It would be good so that I know,
Yeah.
Yep.
so we just make sure we
Right.
are including everything when we do.
Yeah, we're not necessarily keeping score, but we all need to be looking at them and
I think that's a
seeing
very
what
good idea,
people.
because that's
yeah.
something that I've received some, and
Yeah.
you know, what do I do with them? And that's
Yeah.
a great place to,
Yeah.
I mean, other than reply to them.
Even if you just open up a Dropbox folder and just put them all in there.
Yeah, I can put it in
Then,
Dropbox.
then any of us could look at them, and then they, you know, if anybody wants to see them all, there's a record of them. And the other thing that may not have been clear, I think back to Lot 15, is to make it clear that, you know, our legal counsel is going to work at looking at getting us a request for a stay on the timeline for the eminent domain. And that was advice given to us. We had a discussion. We thought that that seemed appropriate for a number of reasons. One, there are so many moving parts, and whatever action we took one way or the other is more than likely going to be impacted by those other things. And so it seemed that that would be a smart thing to see some of the legal arguments go one way or the other, and before, you know, we really make a decision one way or the other. So just so that, make sure that everybody knows that's happening. And then there was one article, I'm not sure if it was in Front Porch Forum or it was in the newspaper, and and I was sort of quoted, it said, I think the select board should do what Phil Pouch said they should do, or something like that, and that it should, that it looked like I was like saying, we should do this, we should do the eminent domain. And
yes.
I don't think I've actually said that. I think one thing I did say is one way or the other, the board should make a decision. And at this point, we're sort of watching for what else is the number of moving parts before we go ahead and make a decision. So, I didn't want to be quoted as saying, yes, I'm for this.
Yes.
I think
Most
that brings up a
definitely.
really good point too, that we all should be vigilant of is, so when we're quoted in wherever, to make sure that we respond to them, at least here in this forum, to say, yeah, that was correct, or that wasn't quite exactly what I said.
Yeah.
I think that's something we should really all pay attention to, because that you need to be right.
Yeah.
Is the bottom line. You just need it to be right.
And, it's, if I have a definitive opinion and I say it, that's okay. And so
Yeah.
in this
Well,
case,
and also
I
sometimes people take your quotes totally out of
Exactly.
context,
Yeah.
and
They
then
do.
So-
They do, and it's not. Sometimes it's intentional, maybe. Probably most of the time it's not. But I think it's a really good point.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we did have the motion that you made about the ash trees that we not put on hold. What did we do?
We're gonna, yeah.
Well, we
Yeah,
were put it
tabled
into table
so-
it, yeah.
We're gonna
And
table-
so we don't need to do anything today, but that's there,
Yeah.
and we'll discuss it. Maybe we can get to that part of the budget.
Yeah, because Paul was gonna get numbers for us too.
Well, for the budget, but for us to be able to give an authorization to do the spring treatment of those
Right.
trees
Right.
would be before next budget's year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
so you're going to look for where there might be money. Yeah,
Right, yeah.
And that's all I had. Did anybody have anything else?
Well, this might be a good place to say that I had said, what was it, a month or so ago, when we had the open meeting, people were talking about Lot 15 and all the RGH people came, and I mentioned that his name was Paul Revelle, I think, the hydrogeologist who spoke.
Steve Ravel.
Steve, thank
Yeah.
you. And he did say that he called it a sand lens, and he also called it a subsurface aquifer. He was very clear that it wasn't a deep surface aquifer, but it was a place that collected water. And he calls that a subsurface aquifer that collects water when there's a lot of water and then releases it when there isn't much. And he did say, he didn't mention Thistle Hill specifically, but he said that densely concentrated area up on the hill, of course that water comes down and goes under the culvert, and it also gets collected in that sand lens or subsurface aquifer. So I think that he had a lot of good information, and when we're thinking about what to do with Lot 15, it might be worth it to go back and look at that again, look at his testimony. That's what I did. I found it very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not sure we're thinking about what to do with Lot 15. Our role is to recognize what the DRB had identified as deficiencies in what they had asked for the easement. So it's still as I think it's important for people to know the value of a piece of land aside from just its commercial value, that there are other values, but it's not up for us to decide what it should be used for. It's just important for us to recognize all the potential values that it has. So I just was making sure that people understand that we as a select board are not deciding what to do. You were just making that statement that it has other values, that's all.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I would like to, actually, I would really like to thank Renee for having organized on Saturday and Joy,
yes,
and
yeah.
that it really came off. It was really nice.
Really did.
Yeah,
I was like so happy when I left there. I just said that was really nice event.
It was a nice community event. I mean, to see all the different people, all kinds of people came, and it was It was a nice one, so I thank you guys for all coming.
Great. All right, next item is review minutes from November 19th.
I'll make a motion to approve them pending any amendments.
I would just like to say I had a couple little tiny comments, but thank you, Val, for doing these. I thought were well done. So,
There you go.
There you go, get to do it another week.
And the week after that.
We're gonna work you double next month.
I did find one correction I'd like to make under the tree maintenance discussion.
Are you
And-
seconding it then also, Andrea?
Oh, yes, I'm seconding it, sir. The third line, it should say for a 2-year period of time.
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, 2 period of time, yeah, okay.
So I had something where I was just confused about what it meant. Renee reviewed the motion language from the April 17, 2017 meeting
What
regarding
page are you on?
page, I believe it's page
That'd be on
3.
the Town administrator
Yep.
report, I think.
Okay.
Regarding Vermont Gas Fund's motion. She said the only difference was omitting the words programs and projects. I don't understand what that's referring to.
I read it to you, so it wasn't just, I had said that both Joy and I had reviewed the meeting. It was a very long meeting. And so the only words that were missing were the motion, let's see, remaining $60,000 to be put into an investment account with the interest to be used for environmental stewardship of programs and projects. That was the only piece that wasn't in the minutes of public lands, with priority given to Japrag's Park, with the funds to be overseen by elected trustees.
So did you then add that to the minutes?
No,
I know, no.
Because,
that's what was said, but that's not in the minutes.
but that's what I just found in the minutes.
Programs and projects.
Programs and projects.
That's the
Oh.
only piece that was missing.
Oh,
So
I
maybe
see.
it would be better said,
Didn't see project.
reviewed the motion language by reviewing the VCAM presentation and the written select board minutes.
And
And the only difference was the omission of the words programs and projects.
In the written
Put that in
minutes.
quotes.
Yeah.
Right.
In the written.
In the written,
Proposal.
in the written motion
Minutes, yeah.
approved in the minutes of April
Right.
17th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
You could add Joy
Clarification.
reviewed
Yeah.
it too, because
Yeah.
she watched.
So Renee,
Yeah.
yeah.
Something about elected trustees versus something else.
It had, okay, so it had elected officials maybe in the
Yeah.
minutes. This says elected trustees, but
We could split hairs.
Yeah.
yeah, that's.
Did you have
it was
anything else?
different.
No, that was the only thing.
I had a couple items. So in the first page, public comments, the second sentence, after the people left the select board, I think a comma in there. After the people left, the select board continued discussion among themselves. And then the next section, tree maintenance discussion, still on page 1. Just on the second sentence, the treatment would be for the 2 large specific, I think we should say the 2 specific, they're ash trees. I think we should say that
Yeah,
they're
for
ash
2
trees.
specific large ash trees.
Right.
And maybe it's worth saying, the one on the corner of Charlotte, intersection of Charlotte Road and 116, and the one on Lot 1 behind the police station.
Those were the specific ones we talked
Yes,
about.
Yeah.
yeah. And then one more item, again, pretty small. On the third page, the second paragraph, it's just 2 sentences long. Phil moved to change category, is it 3N? Category 3 in the water allocation.
Okay.
Yeah. That was all I had. Any other corrections? All right, so the motion is to approve the minutes as corrected. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that motion passed. We could consider approving the warrants. I didn't get them. They're still over there.
I can go
But,
get
yeah.
a B, but
We
I
could,
I
yeah.
saw them, so I'll make the motion.
Okay,
Second?
all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passed. And we don't need to go into executive session. Anything else? If not, then a motion to adjourn. We have a busy 2 months coming. So there's 2 more meetings in December and then 4 in January, if
Basically
as
90
needed.
90 days to a town meeting, more or less.
Okay.
From today, 90 days?
Well, I don't know, more or less 90 days.
Holy moly.
I don't know exactly what the day is.
Yes, 3 months.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was good to get the sort of the general budget look, quick look, obviously.
Yeah.
There'll be some changes, but
Yeah.
that there's no real big surprises in
Right.
there, no real things, so that's good.
Yeah, I did forget to bring up one thing. We haven't adjourned yet, right?
No, we haven't.
Okay. Was
Quick.
that I would like we were asked what we'd like to focus on in the beginning, and I said the energy
budget,
thing.
yeah.
The other thing would be whether we could have a town-wide emphasis on invasives. So I think it would involve, and I'm going to forward some information that I got from Charlotte
Okay.
about that
They've-
works. The
they've
highway
been working
department, their
Trails
trails
committee.
committee, their public lands people, so they kind of have a town-wide strategy.
Okay,
So maybe we
all right. All right, so with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Natalie, second. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
All right. Thank you.